American History Month, because the Black experience in the United States is the experience of us all. And so this afternoon we'd like to take you through a journey using poetry and story and song. Time, of course, will not permit us to go into great detail, so we're going to highlight certain strategic parts of the history of blacks in America, beginning with the time of slavery, and then the civil rights movement, the search for unity, and the resilience and oneness of the human spirit. You have the words. First of all, this is Mr. Edward Harris, who has a really beautiful voice and who's consented to be our soloist today. But you have the words of the songs that we'll be singing, and if anyone feels so moved to join in, please do. We'd be happy to have you join in the songs. So the Black experience in the United States or in America begins with the specter of slavery. It's estimated that between the 1500s and the 1800s, when slavery was finally abolished, that between 12.5 million Africans were taken from the continent of Africa and brought to the New World. Not all of them to the United States, but at least maybe 500, between 500,000 were brought to the United States. It's estimated that 2 million approximately died on the journey, which was called the Middle Passage, across the ocean. And those that didn't die on the journey across the ocean, many more died under the conditions of slavery, which were brutal, inhuman, and so forth. You know, it's ironic that the slave ships had names like Jesus, Estrella, which means star in Spanish, or Esperanza, which means hope in Spanish, or mercy. The poet Robert Hayden would say, "They're bright, ironic names, like jest of kindness on a murderer's lips. Jesus, Estrella, Esperanza, mercy. Sails flashing to the wind like weapons, sharks following the moans, the fever and the dying. Hora the corpuscent and the compass rose, middle passage, journey through death to life upon these shores." 10th April 1800, blacks rebellious, crew uneasy. Our linguist says their moaning is a prayer for death, ours and their own. Some try to starve themselves. Lost 3 this morning, leapt with crazy laughter to the waiting sharks, sang as they went under. Desire Tartar, Adventure Ann, standing to America, bringing home black gold, black ivory, black seed. Deep in the festering hole thy father lies. Of his bones New England pews are made. Those are altar lights that were his eyes. Weep, Jesus Savior, pilot me over life's tempestuous sea. We pray that thou wilt grant safe passage to our vessels, bringing heathen souls unto thy chastening. Deponeth further saith that the Bella J left the coast of Guinea with cargo of 500 blacks and odd through the barracoons of Florida. That there was hardly room between the sweltering decks for even half the human cattle stowed spoon fashion there. That some went mad with thirst and tore their flesh and sucked their blood. That the captain and crew lusted with the comeliest of the savage wenches, kept naked in the cabins. That there was one they called the Guinea Rose, and they cast lots and fought to lie with her. That when the boatswain piped all hands, the flames spreading starboard already were beyond control, the Negroes howling, their chains engulfed in flames. That the burning blacks could not be reached. That the crew abandoned ship, leaving their shrieking negresses behind. That the captain perished drunken with the wenches. Further deponent saith not. Middle passage, journey through death to life upon these shores.
Oh, freedom, oh, freedom, oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, freedom, oh, freedom, oh, freedom, oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
Runs, falls, rises, stumbles on from darkness into darkness, and the darkness thicketed with shapes of terror, and the hunters pursuing, and the hounds pursuing, and the night cold, and the night long, and the river to cross, and the jack-o'-lanterns beckoning, and blackness ahead. And when shall I reach that somewhere morning, and keep on going, and never turn back, and keep on going? Renegade, renegade, renegade. Many thousands rise and go, many thousands crossing over. Oh, mythic north, oh, star-shaped yonder Bible city. Some go weeping and some rejoicing, some in silks and some in shackles, some in coffins and some in carriages. Rise and go, or fare ye well. No more auction block for me, no more driver's lash for me. If you see my Pompey, 30 years of age, new breeches, plain stockings, nigger shoes. If you see my Anna, likely young mulatto, branded E on the right cheek, R on the left, catch them if you can and notify subscriber. Catch them if and you can. But it won't be easy now. They'll dart underground when you try to catch them. Turn into quicksand, plunge into quicksand, whirlpools and mazes. Turn into scorpions when you try to catch them. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave. North Star and Bonanza Gold, I'm bound for freedom. Freedom bound, and oh, Susanna, don't you cry for me. Rises from their anguish and their power. Harriet Tubman, whip-scarred, woman of earth, a summoning, a shining, mean to be free. And this was the way of it, brethren, way we journeyed from Cape to Can. Moon so bright and no place to hide, the cry up and the patter-rollers riding, hound dogs belling in bladed air, and fear starts a movement. Never make it. Lord, we're never going to make it now. And she's turned on us, leveled pistol glinting in the moonlight. Dead folks can't jaybird talk, she says. You keep on going now or die, she says. Wanted, Harriet Tubman, alias the General, alias Moses, stealer of slaves, in league with Garrison, Alcott, Emerson, Thoreau, Garrett, Douglas, John Brown, armed and known to be dangerous. Wanted, reward, dead or alive. Tell me, O Ezekiel, tell me, do you see? Mailed Jehovah coming to deliver me. Hudal calling in the ghosted air, 5 times calling to the haints in the air. Shadow of a face in the scary leaves, shadow of a voice in the talking leaves. Come a ride of my train. And oh, that train, ghost story train, through swamp and savannah, movering over trestles of dew, through caves of the wish, midnight special on a saber track, movering, first stop mercy and the last a hallelujah. Come a ride in my train. Mean to be free. Nobody knows.
Nobody trouble I've seen, nobody knows my sorrow. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Glory, hallelujah. Sometimes I'm up, sometimes I'm down. Oh, yes, Lord. Sometimes I'm level to the ground. Oh, yes, Lord. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows my sorrow. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Glory, hallelujah.
The Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 ended slavery, and the bloody Civil War ended in 1865. However, full rights and equality were still to come. After a brief period of freedom, where in many states blacks were actually elected to government positions and served even in the Congress of the United States, there was a gradual stripping away of rights and freedoms, and the institution of Jim Crow laws across much of the South. These laws relegated blacks to second-class citizenship, and in many southern states they were deprived of the right to vote. Blacks couldn't use the same public facilities as whites. They couldn't live in the same residential areas. They couldn't go to the same schools. Even they couldn't drink from the same water fountains. The Supreme Court sanctioned the principle of separate but equal in the famous Plessy versus Ferguson case in 1896. Although Jim Crow laws were not adopted in the North, still blacks experienced discrimination in housing, in job search, and education. Gradually, the yoke of injustice and discrimination became too much to bear. Undoubtedly, the Second World War was a factor where many blacks, both men and women, had gone overseas and experienced freedom, relative freedom, and a lack of prejudice. And they had fought and risked their lives to protect democracy and freedom, and came home only to face prejudice and isolation and discrimination. During the 1950s and 60s, the civil rights movement began. Blacks and whites arose to demand equal rights under the law and social justice. The Montgomery bus boycott that began in 1955, when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat for a white, and that began the bus boycott that sparked a massive movement of civil disobedience throughout the South. Freedom rides, voter registration drives, marches, hundreds, indeed thousands, risked their lives, accepted verbal and physical abuse, imprisonment, and some even death, demanding equal rights. In 1963, on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, before a crowd of some 100,000 strong, Martin Luther King, the spokesperson for the movement, delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech. A speech whose promise, aspirations, and truths, despite the undoubted progress that has been made, sadly still echo and remain unfulfilled to this day. He said, 50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on an island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. Even though we face difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up to live out the meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked ones straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope, and this is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will all be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to walk together, to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that one day we will be free. And this will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, my country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, to thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring.
Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. Keep on walking, keep on a-talking, walking up the King's Highway. Ain't gonna let no ways turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let race, hatred turn me round. I'm gonna keep on a-walking, keep on a-talking, walking up the King's Highway. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. Keep on a-walking, keep on a-talking, walking up the King's Highway.
The Civil Rights Movement led to the enactment of the Civil Rights Act in 1964, legislation that was introduced by John Kennedy before his assassination and passed under Lyndon B. Johnson. The Voting Rights Act of 1965. These laws guaranteed equal employment for all and the use of voter literacy and the abolishment of the use of literacy tests for voting. Eventually, the Fair Housing Act in 1968 outlawed discrimination based on race, religion, sex, or national origin. But laws don't change the hearts of men, as the Ballad of Rudolph Reed will let us know. Rudolph Reed was Oaken. Oaken means hardworking. His wife was Oaken too, and his two good girls and his good little man oakened as they grew. I'm not hungry for berries, I'm not hungry for bread, but hungry, hungry for a house, where at night a man in bed may never hear the plaster stir as if in pain, may never hear the roaches falling like fat rain, where never wife and children need go blinking through the gloom, where every room of many rooms will be full of room. Oh, my home may have its east or west or north or south behind it. All I know is I shall know it and fight for it when I find it. It was in a street of bitter white that he made his application, for Rudolph Reed was oakener than others in the nation. The agent's steep and steady stare corroded to a grin. Why, you black old tough old hell of a man, move your family in. Nary a grin grinned Rudolph Reed, nary a curse cursed he, but moved in his house with his dark little wife and his dark little children 3. A neighbor would look with a yawning eye that squeezed into a slit, but the Rudolph Reeds and the children 3 were too joyous to notice it. For were they not firm in a home of their own, with windows everywhere, and a beautiful banistered stair, and a front yard for flowers, and a backyard for grass? The first night, a rock, big as 2 fists. The second, a rock big as 3. But nary a curse cursed Rudolph Reed, though oaken as man could be. The third night, a silvery ring of glass, patience ached to endure. But he looked, and lo, small Mabel's blood was staining her gaze so pure. Then up did rise our Rudolph Reed, and pressed the hand of his wife, and went to the door with a 34 and a beastly butcher knife. He ran like a madman into the night, and the words in his mouth were stinking. By the time he had hurt his first white man, he was no longer thinking. By the time he had hurt his 4th white man, Rudolph Reed was dead. His neighbors gathered and kicked his corpse. Nigger, his neighbors said. Small Mabel whimpered all night long for calling herself the cause. Broke-eyed mother did nothing but change the bloody gauze. Human impulses, human aspirations. These words from the Declaration of Independence ring out. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Human impulses, human aspirations. Are we all that different? For black and white Southerners everywhere, what we all had. Well, what we all had was cornbread and turnip greens and pallets on the plank floor. We'd cover up in lumpy old quilts made from Grandma's flour sack dresses when all the kinfolks came to visit. We all felt bare toes in hot sand as we scampered for the next bit of shade, chiggers and stickers and prickly pears, and didn't we all sometimes feel that cool river mud between our toes oozing on our burning souls? And didn't we see fireflies as big as stars? Remember how we'd catch them in fruit jars on soft summer nights when a million crickets sang their crickety songs under lighted up lovers' moons shining onto front porch swings. You all know how we all ate watermelons, red ones and yellow ones, juicy sweet so the hearts cracked out. We spit the seeds on the ground in backyards where we sat with our granddaddies in kitchen chairs brought out in the cool of the evening. We all bought jelly beans and orange slices from Duke and Ayers on a Saturday night, and we all carried our groceries home in brown paper bags, happy as can be. All our wash pots were out back and black, and we all went to church on Sunday, and we went to tent meetings where everybody sang and everybody got baptized. How come we never met? How come we don't yet? O children of men, know ye not why we created you all from the same dust, that no one should exalt himself over the other? In the late 1920s, a black lawyer by the name of Louis Gregory gave up a very promising law practice in the city of Washington, D.C., to travel the length and breadth of this land and work for racial justice and unity. He had many experiences, but one particular experience marked him a great deal. He said that he and his companions had gone out to visit a village school, or a rural school, about 18 miles from the town, and they traveled over a dirt road in the rain. And they stayed at the school maybe 2 or 3 hours, and it had continued to rain the whole time that they were there. So as they left, the road that was filled with potholes and muddy to begin with the condition of the road had become much worse. And so as they were going along and slipping and sliding from one side to another, they slipped off the road into a ditch. And so the men piled out and tried to push and pull this car back onto the road without any success. And so the 2 women who were with them also got out to help, and the little boy. And they worked for more than an hour without being able to make any progress. And they were becoming a little bit desperate when in the distance they saw a pickup truck coming. They saw that there were 2 white men in the pickup truck, but they had no choice but to ask their assistance. And the 2 men graciously came down, and so the 2 white men and the 2 black men were pushing and trying to get this car back on the road to no avail. And then the 2 women came out, and there were 2 black men, 2 white men, and two women, and they worked again for nearly an hour without any success. And finally the 2 white men said, "Sorry, we haven't been able to do anything, but when we get to town, we'll send somebody to help." But the little boy said, "Please, let's try one more time. I'll come and help too." And so now they were 2 black men, 2 white men, 2 women, and a young boy, young and old, black and white, working together. And very quickly this time, the car got back on the road. Now Louis Gregory and his friends thanked them very graciously and cleaned themselves up. The truck went on its way. And when they got back in their car and they drove about 2 miles, what did they see but the truck that the 2 white men were in had also fallen off the road. And they laughed, not because they thought it was funny, but because they were grateful to have the chance to return the favor. And so again, all of them, the 2 white men, the 2 black men, the 2 women, and the young boy, all pushed, and very quickly the truck was back on the road. Now Louis Gregory thought a great deal about this incident, and he said, "So amongst all the different races and groups and classes of people in the world today, the ideal is cooperation, mutuality, service. If one wishes to distinguish himself, let him distinguish himself as a servant of humanity. If one wishes to distinguish himself, let him stand on this exalted principle of the oneness of the human race, of the entire human race. Whoever stands on this exalted principle will never be shaken by the shifting sands of time. Whoever stands on this exalted principle, the oneness of humanity, like the lever of Archimedes, will move the world. O children of men, know ye not why we created you all from the same dust, that no one should exalt himself over the other."
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we'll walk hand in hand someday. Black and white together, black and white together, we'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we'll walk hand in hand someday.
So, actually, we'll keep the lesson for the end. So, the last verse for the end. Are we all so different? The poet Maya Angelou once said, everyone in the world has gone to bed one night with fear or pain or loss or disappointment. And yet each of us is awakened the next morning and said to our neighbor, how are you? Fine, thank you. It's amazing. Wherever that spirit abides in the human being, there is the nobleness of the human spirit. And despite it all, black and white, Asian, Spanish, Native American, pretty, plain, fat, thin, vowed or celibate, we rise. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I rise. Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I rise. Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. And so naturally, I rise, I rise, I rise. O children of men, know ye not why we created you all from the same dust, that no one should exalt himself over the other. We shall live in peace.
We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall live in peace someday.
Thank you very much. That ends the program. If anybody has any comments or questions they'd like to ask, you're welcome. Thank you to Mr. Harris.
May I say something?
Yes.
I am so absolutely impressed, not only with your talent, but all that you know, the history that you have presented to us. The music, the voices, everything was just perfect. And to think that you are right here with us, I thank you for that. Thank you for all that you've done today. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. So you don't have any questions, unfortunately. But thanks to all of you for coming and sharing this moment with us.